Luckily, like I said, last year there was about
My GIS and climate studies, various
No.
That was terrible.
Yeah, it was terrible.
We had to deal with that too.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. Hopefully that doesn't ever happen again.
Have you all been sick or is it like?
No, like I got, computer virus. My email got hacked
Oh, no.
on, what was it, Friday? It was. Yeah, well, I didn't ever see where it came from, but yeah, I couldn't open it, but other people said that they could, and like it wanted me to enter like a password or something, and Linda's like, nope.
Yeah. Even if it's legitimate, if they ask you for a password,
Yeah.
I don't have time.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no.
whenever you're ready to decide.
7:05, and I will call the committee meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. First order of business is to approve the January 8th, 2019 Planning Commission minutes. Hopefully you all had a chance to read these. They came out to us and reviewed them. So do I have a motion to approve the January 8th minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the January minutes.
A second?
I'll say it.
I just abstained from voting because I was not here for that meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, questions, discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. All in favor approving the January 8th minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, and we have one abstain. The minutes are approved for the January 8th meeting. Next agenda item is the staff report. Mr. Hendricks?
Construction is continuing all over town as it was when it wasn't bad weather. At least as it relates to the buildings, etc. The outdoor construction is kind of slow on all the city projects, streetscape, the bridge project, the new pump station, the new sewer line. They're all kind of slowed down because of the weather. They can't really do a whole lot of digging other than the deep sewer they're digging on. Anticipate a early spring finish of all of that stuff, at least the road stuff, which will be good for downtown. The Main Street Trail project is out for bid, or excuse me, not out for bid, it's out for design right now. That bid was awarded last board meeting or two, I don't remember exactly when. That's under design, so we will have the trail project hopefully open by March of next year. And then the other part of that design project process was the south commercial sidewalks. So from Shamrock Way up to 92 and then 92 up to the school for regular sidewalks to make that walkable. That design is hopefully going to be moving a little bit faster so that can hopefully be ready by September when school starts. Kids can start walking up that way for school. And I anticipate in the very near future that we will start the infrastructure construction on the Smithville Marketplace. That's been wrapped up. appears as though the last easement and some land swaps have now finalized. I haven't seen the paperwork to sign off, but I did get a flurry of all the construction plans for the infrastructure. So, and right now, all those show 4 businesses going in instead of 2, what we've been speaking. So, don't have names to report of the other 2 businesses yet, but hopefully we'll know pretty soon. And then the Eagle Ridge, Eagle Heights, the one by the school, on that subdivision, they've pulled their construction permit so they can start their grading. You may have seen that. The grading's going on as we speak. Just finished. They ran late today. The subdivision at 144th and is in the same status, under construction. They're shooting for a spring time frame. The Hills of Shannon extension, it started last year. They weren't able to get it paved in time, so it's on hold until spring as well. So we're going to have a whole bunch of stuff hitting on in spring, which is good. But I think we're about ready for traffic to stop. So, or the traffic snows to stop. So that's all I have. If you have any questions about anything else, I'll try to answer.
On the downtown streets, I know there's still, some
Yep.
drops, drop-offs, so, and I'm assuming all that, if they're looking at having done by
Yes.
early spring.
Yeah, early spring. The downside for those bumps and stuff is that it's called -2. They've left it 2 inches down, so that when they get the rest of it done, they'll be able to come in and put the clean cap of 2-inch asphalt over the top. That cap has to be 50 degrees when it goes on. So the other work, there's some more demo. It's not, we haven't reached the darkest part yet. Down in front of the bank and 169 will be closing in a few weeks, depending upon the weather. We have a scenario where it's not frozen. That's why they haven't done it. They can't tear it out because the frost gets in the ground, and they have to wait till the ground completely thaws to do new testing and then put the asphalt in. That base asphalt doesn't have to go in at 50. It has to be 30 degrees. So hopefully we'll have something on it.
Now, how will that affect those people in the apartments down
They will have to go around. If they're headed north, the detour route will have them coming down Meadow. If they're headed south and they want to get to them from
there? There isn't that entry in there?
No, they'll just have to come around
Oh.
because all of from the concrete on 169 in front of Platte Valley Bank all the way to just past the Deafit Law Office will be completely torn out and then repaved. That's about a 4-day, 5-day process. If we get a batch of good weather with no precipitation, they can knock it out in 4 or 5 days.
Good luck with that.
Yes. Good thing I don't have hair. I pulled it all out.
We're gonna have to give you one of those widgets or something. Or you're gonna start on that mustache.
Yeah, it's I've already shaved it partially off because I was pulling it out.
Okay, any other questions?
I don't have any names to go with these stores that are going to be open comments.
Well, we know 2 of them. One of them is Price Chopper. We know that one. The other one is apparently Porter out of Kearney. The other 2, there's rumors flying around, but I have not been able to confirm definitively. But I will tell you, I've got a pretty good idea based on the outside scene. But until I actually hear something, I don't want to start. I don't want to be confirming a rumor that's false.
Right. Where are we at with I know the street meeting process, we went through that on several of our streets, and everything had to be notified
Yep.
and all of that. Where is that process at?
that everybody that's due a notification has got a notification. We've had several calls. The biggest issue is not street names or any of it. The biggest issue for most folks is the numbers. But when you look at people along the road, and some of them have even numbers next to odd numbers, and you have, when you're heading north, the numbers should be getting bigger. When they go up and down and up and down and odd and even, there's going to be a lot of folks with numbers changing, and we're trying to address the numbers, at least on Old F Highway, based upon an actual system, so that you want north of 6th Street, you want 700s instead of 500s. That way, folks that know the street grid system generally, how that works, will know there's 4 streets, so 400s should be coming up. That kind of concept. And then when you get out of the old part, the 3-digit numbers, we've got the new 5-digit numbering system based upon the 0 being Kansas City, so 188th, 144th, those street numbers. The block just north of 180th Street should be 180000 or 001, depending on which side of the road it's on.
Is that something you think we're going to get straightened out, accomplished, whatever you want to call it, before your spring hits with everything else?
It should be done in about 24 days, 22 days. Okay.
I think I have an additional question on that. An individual reached out to me and wanted to speak to the board. Is that something that needs to go before planning and zoning now, or would that be something before a regular city council?
It would go to the Board of Aldermen, especially the numbering. The street names was a recommendation. It was a extra process we added to bring it to the planning commission. The first time we did that, to be quite frank, it was a year or so ago when we did the prior to that. It had never happened that way. It just the board said, here's the new street name.
So I'll be requesting that probably put on a work session to allow the citizens to have a more open discussion.
Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anything else you want to have for staff? Okay. Thank you, Jack. Next agenda item is a rezoning hearing for 179th Street and US 169. It is currently A1,
Yes.
and we're looking at taking it to AR. Is that correct, or do I have it backwards?
No, you have it partially correct. It's A1, a 20-acre parcel.
Okay.
They're proposing to divide off a 5-acre parcel. Our code requires any lot smaller than 10 acres has to be AR, it cannot stay A1. So the 5-acre parcel, they need to make the zoning a little more restrictive to the AR district in order to allow the lot to be smaller than 10 acres. So if you look at the final plat, when it comes up, assuming there's a recommendation or an approval of the rezoning, then the final plat can go through. And lot 1 would be the 5-acre parcel, and lot 2 would stay the same at A1 for ag, the general ag.
And you guys can look at the staff report there, kind of giving the information on this of the existing A1, their surrounding area. Housing is roughly 3 to 10 acre lots. It complies with the comprehensive plan.
In addition to the staff report, Ms. Chairman, I've also submitted the draft findings of fact. If you recall, we've been going on the motion to approve the findings of fact or amend it, depending on whether you agree with items 1 through 8, the findings that are the staff's recommended findings. Don't need to change number 9 because it says that you are simply taking into account the testimony that you're about to hear. into consideration, as well as the staff report and this document and all the codes and stuff. So, from staff's perspective, it's pretty straightforward, and you can open the public hearing at your convenience.
I would, well, see, is there anyone from the public that wants to speak to the rezoning issue of 179th and 169?
I don't have any cards, no.
Hearing none, I will close the public portion of the rezoning hearing for that. And open up, do I have a motion to approve the finding of facts and conclusions to change the zoning for the 5-acre sector to AR, and then it would be what, 15 acres left?
Right, it would not change.
That would not change. Do I have a motion to approve the finding of facts to change the 5 acres from A1 to AR?
I move to accept the finding of facts and conclusion of the law of rezoning 5 acres to AR and the remaining 15 will stay as A1.
Second?
I'll second it.
Discussion. Any questions? Concerns? I know one concern I had, and I did address this with Jack, was, another entry had been approved by MoDOT for that 5 acres coming off of 169. And he said yes, that MoDOT had been contacted and approved another driveway coming off of 169. So I know that does get a little congested coming up the hill, they're getting towards 180th sometimes, but back to the professionals that be that know that better than I do. Any other comments or concerns? Okay. Brandy, you want to do a roll call?
Yes. Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
Deb?
Aye.
Trenda?
Aye.
Rand?
Aye.
Shirley?
Aye.
5-0.
This will be in an ordinance form, your recommendation to rezone this 5 acres to AR, the next board meeting, which is the 19th, I think. Sounds right. And it will be a ordinance, first reading on the 19th, second reading comes the next board meeting after that. So that'll be the next hearing.
Was approved. Zoning was approved, rezoning approved. So the next agenda item is the single phase final plat for the two lots, and that is called Archer Acres subdivision. And you have that for you. Looks like it is pretty straightforward. Your staff report on that for the plat. Everything looks pretty good and straightforward on that. Say MoDOT has approved the intersection.
MoDOT's approved the entrance, is authorizing an entrance for it, and our engineers have approved the plat, engineers/surveyors, and approved the plat as compliant with all of our requirements.
And there is utilities, except they would have to have septic, correct?
Yes.
And there is no dedication of parkland or anything of that nature.
It's an ag addition.
Okay. Do I have anyone from the public that would like to speak to this on the final plat of Archer Acres?
I mean, I can speak to it if you wish me to speak to it.
Only if you'd like to. If you'd like to speak to it, or feel free.
I'll just get brief. My
State your
actually,
name and address and
Melinda Gray, 17823 North 169 Highway. So I'm actually on behalf of my uncle, and it'll be his 5 acres. And he has inherited, we've had that property since the early 70s, so I've lived here most of my life. And the whole purpose of this is now my grandma's passed, this is his, but he's actually recently had that even brain tumor, and he's recovering from surgery, or he beat himself.
okay. And so it's going to stay in the family, basically?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not getting rid of it. And do you guys have any questions or anything for me? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the single-phase final plat for Orchard Acres subdivision?
I'll make a motion to approve the single phase final plat for the Orchard Acres subdivision. Not as articulate.
Do I have a second? Okay. Discussion? Concerns, comments? Okay, hearing none. Any call?
Rand,
Aye.
Trenda,
Aye.
Deb,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
Shirley,
Aye.
5-0.
This item will not be on the next one, because it can't be approved until the zoning is approved. So it will be held simultaneous with the rezoning ordinance. When it goes up for second reading, this will be on the same agenda. Because rezoning has to pass before this happens.
Next agenda item is the medical marijuana zoning districts and public hearing. So, turn it over to Jack to kind of give us a preliminary and staff report and review of the amendment, the passing of that, kind of what the different districts are and what those mean, and what type of facilities and things and what those mean. So with that, Hendricks,
Yes, we've had a lot of staff working on trying to get this figured out. Had our first meeting prior to November 6th with folks to, if this one passes, it sounded like this one was likely going to be the one to pass. What's that mean? And basically across Missouri for local governments, it had a whole lot of folks on. I don't know. So we're working through those processes. So obviously November 6th it passed, 65% plus statewide, same percentage plus here in Smithville. So it has made medical marijuana legal, the bigger thing, and I've got the staff report, I attached it to included it in the packet online for the public to look at. This is what we know so far. These are the issues we see, and I will briefly go through it. If you recall in the staff report that we have, one of the things in the statute or in the constitutional amendment is that the maximum distance that a city can put the similar to an alcohol where they can't be within 100 feet or 1,000 feet or whatever, a school, church, daycare. That is maximum of 1,000, but it does allow cities to make it easier. They can reduce that from 1,000 to say 500 to match their alcohol, which is 300 to 500 is generally what the alcohol is. I worked under the assumption 1,000 is 1,000. We're staying there for the next portion of it. You have a copy of the document on your desk. It may help you all see. If you can't see that one, my guess is you won't be able to see the great big one behind me any better. All this is a photograph of that. And you'll see numerous orange circles. Those orange circles represent a 2,000-foot diameter or a 1,000-foot radius circle based upon the scale of this map. And I place them on every daycare, church, and school that I'm aware of in our community. If they have a business license, they're identified on here from a daycare standpoint. The churches don't really need business license, but I do know where those are as well. You'll see some of them are clustered close together. As with the alcohol ordinance, that clustering is based upon certain factors associated with, it's not the front door to the place, the daycare center, it's the property it sits on. So in the extreme north end of this, at the top of it, you'll see there's 3 of them in a row. Well, that property is very long. It's where the Community of Christ Church is. So one of those is set on each of the corners to give you the 1,000-foot radius from that one. All of those facilities come through there. The big area where there's 7 or 8 of them, that is the area where the Lutheran school is, the Old Catholic Church. And just north of there, just a bit, is the daycare that sits right across from Stonebridge. And then you've got the church just north of that. Then you've got the entire school campus. So that's a big area that would be barred. And then south of there, most of those are sitting on 169. You have the daycare just south of McDonald's that takes up a 1,000-foot radius. You have a daycare on the major mall property that takes up the other portion of that. That's how that all gets blocked in, associated with that. And then down south, the farthest south, at Amory Road, behind the shops is the subdivision. Behind the subdivision is the Landmark Church. And it has a daycare in it as well. So the intent was to show you there's a lot of area that you just can't put them no matter what. The other map is the old version of our zoning map, gives you an idea of where things could go. Currently, as I indicated in my staff report, 2 of the uses are specifically identified in our existing zoning, and that would be a drugstore, because a dispensary is basically a place to dispense drugs. And then the other one would be a testing facility. Those are both allowed in the B3 district. It's not clear associated with the other facilities, which are the manufacturing of the edibles or extracting the THC out of the products. It's the infused products manufacturing facility and the cultivation facility. Based upon what they are, and we're talking about marijuana, cannabis, whatever that has THC in it. So it's still technically, federally, it's a Schedule 3 drug or 4 drug, so it's still illegal. So growing it has to be in one of these specific facilities. There is a separate provision in Missouri law for hemp that is not. It's got to have a certain, it's tested apparently to get below a certain THC level, microns apparently. And that is the rope hemp. That's a separate product. It's legal. It can go in any field anywhere. And in this area, it kind of does already. So that is a completely separate operation. This drug grow cultivation facility can either be indoor or outdoor according to the constitutional amendment. Whether it's indoor or outdoor is irrelevant to us. Our staff presentation to you would indicate, number 1, the entity, the legislative or the lobbying group that drafted this amendment and did all the legwork and got all the stuff started from all the other states. They recommend that all facilities but the dispensary be an I-1. Primarily because of the high security. Those facilities will have higher security. From our perspective as staff, the only way to make those work in our scenario is use this site plan for industrial ground. We already have a site plan ordinance that would account for higher security. Some of the things that we don't know for sure what the impact on our water system is going to be. know some of these facilities, if it's a cultivation facility, we're talking 25,000 gallons of water a day. That can add up real quick. So, you know, when you're having 25 times 30, that's a lot of water in a month. You know, that basically would be, I don't know, 50 houses or more. So it's a lot of water usage. We do not know on either the cultivation side or the manufacturing side what the sewer impacts will be it stormwater or sanitary. I assume there's going to be some chemical treatment, so we do have provisions already in our codes for industrial and commercial waste, so they would be able to take care of that aspect of it. So there's kind of a bifurcated system. Where can these facilities go? And then how does the city regulate those entities? The law, the constitutional amendment, gives us pretty narrow focus on what we can do. In discussion with the Board of Aldermen, the mayor, and senior staff here, we've kind of taken it into there's going to be land acquisition and where it goes, and then all the other regulations. Obviously, we're the planning commission. So with that being said, we're going to focus on the comprehensive plan, where they can go, the districts that would be appropriate. All the other regulations will come later. And the good thing is, fortuitously enough, the state doesn't even have the regulations implemented or crafted yet that will give us a little more meat on the bones of what a marijuana cultivation facility has to be, what it looks like, or a dispensary facility, or the products facility. So a lot of the regulations that we ultimately can look at will be best handled when we do the business licensing. June 4th is the deadline for the state to have all the rigs together to give up, so that they can give out the applications and the instructions on how to fill them out to the industry. At that point in time is when we'll get into the serious nitty-gritty portions of it. So in order for the folks, when they get that application on June 4th, they have until August 3rd, I believe it is, to get those submitted to the state. One of that application process is going to be that they have a site already determined, and it's got the zoning, it's got all, it's ready to go. So from our perspective, to the extent that this law was crafted by a bunch of attorneys, and it's a very well-heeled industry nationwide, we don't want to run afoul of the standards placed in the constitutional amendment. And that is that we have the limited ability to do time, place, and manner restrictions, and whatever we implement cannot be unduly burdensome. We know definitively there will be 24 dispensary facilities in the 6th congressional district where we sit. There won't be any more than that, because they're limited to 24 in each congressional district, 192 statewide. Similar scenario for the cultivation and for the manufacturing. Those numbers are different. There are no, that I can find, any limitations on the number of testing facilities. You know, 61 cultivation facilities across the state, 82 manufacturing facilities across the state. Each divided up into the districts as they work. We anticipate, based upon the inquiries that my department has received, that we're going to probably have at least 1, maybe 2 serious applications coming out of our city. And potentially more right around us.
For which portion?
All.
For all, 1 or 2 on each section of this?
Yeah.
That you are-
The information that I gleaned is that it is highly likely, if it's an indoor grow facility, that it will be a grow facility with a testing facility, a manufacturing facility, and a small dispensary at the front. They're going to handle all their security in one location. Our zoning does allow a retail drugstore type facility in the industrial districts, if that's where we choose to put them. But they would be limited to 25% of the square foot of the entire building could be for the retail side, which would be the sales of it. So this map, if you look at it, you'll see some light gray areas down by where commercial comes in with the I-1 designation down here. That's behind the car wash across the street from sorry. There's 57 acres behind that, undeveloped right now. It's zoned I-1. Then there's some area behind the post office also. A little gray area as well.
And it's
Also
all
zoned.
red.
Yeah, it's completely surrounded by red. So up there by where Phil Wright's Wright Automotive's up there, all those places on James Street, they're zoned that currently as well. So that kind of gives you a layout. If you look at the orange circles map, you'll see that for fortuitous reasons or not, don't know, both of those areas that are zoned I-1 are not covered by an orange circle. So that's kind of what we're talking about in a nutshell. The report, I went into a lot more detail, and I've included all of the district regulations pulled in directly out of our code so we can have an easy snippet of those. Questions, I'll go into it. Ultimately, as this is a public hearing associated with a change, we need to do procedurally, Madam Chairman, the same similar scenario as with a rezoning hearing. We open it up to the public, they get to provide their comment. And at the end of the public comment period, you close the public hearing, it will be closed, and then it's all discussion.
Okay. Are you finished?
Yes, I think we've got a,
You have questions?
here's kind of where we sit. So if you all want to have a couple of questions ahead of the public comment, or the public hearing portion of it, you can do that. And that's up to you, Madam Chairman, how you need to do that. We just want to have the public the opportunity to throw their input in on it as well.
I think I will go ahead and open the public forum of this and allow you all to speak to this and ask questions that you may have, comments, concerns, whatever. And then once we've heard that, then we will close the public section and we can discuss further. So, Brandy, with that, do we have some public comments?
Yep, Mr. Biller?
Please state your name and address for the record, and then we'll probably try to hold it to 3 minutes or so.
No problem. Jim Miller's my name. I live at 7575 Southwest County Line Road. That's Humboldt. I really just came for this map, but then listening to Jack talk, I had a couple of questions or comments. How about that? That's better.
Which speaker is that? I'll turn the volume down.
This ain't counting in my time.
Well, there you go. Yeah. If you turn it around, Jim, we can hear you if you were standing in the park.
I was going to say, I probably should have sit down. So at any rate, you talked about the 1,000-foot zones. I also part owner of the CBD store behind Medicine Shop, which I don't know how far that is from that daycare. It's probably pretty close. 600 feet. I'm thinking. When you commented that there's a possibility you might shave those measurements down, or I mean, would that be something we could take up at a later date? Is that something that the council would say absolutely no to? And I, just posing the question. I'm necessarily looking for an answer. Not necessarily looking for an answer this evening.
Right. That's something we will have to discuss and come to a decision on.
And then you commented about all the facilities being together. The testing facility, I believe, will be run by the state in a different separate facility than what you just your own products. So, other than that, I guess that's it, I don't know. 3 cultivation centers can be owned by one entity. I don't know if that's in your stuff there too, but anyway, that's all I really got. Like I said, I come for this and shave it under the.
And so, excuse me, so you have the store that is behind Medicine Shop or the facility?
Excuse me, say it again?
So what facility do you have that?
Well, it's called All Nature's, Mother Nature's Table, and we changed it now. It's going to be All Natural Superstore, which will be a warehousing company, basically. My partner owns the building.
Okay.
There is reasonable usable space back there. We've been trying to get rid of it. We talked to Jack about doing, what do you guys call it?
Shared use office.
Just basically blue offices. The roof fell, got blew off of. We had a heck of a disaster. We lost St. Luke's out of there. So we've got basically 65% of that building sitting empty right now. Obviously, if we could put in a dispensary there, $2.5 million is about what we spend putting the dispensary in. It should produce somewhere around $3.5, $4 million a year. Returns after it gets going. I don't think this would be the right place for us on the grows. And obviously we just put one dispensary here, spread the rest of them out, in different areas. So that's kind of what you're looking at if we could get one in there. You're probably looking at 8 or 10, 12 employees full-time. It's all said and done also.
Okay.
All right, any other questions?
Are we talking about medical marijuana dispensary or CBD?
Well, that would be determined by the state also. If the state would allow them to work together, we would have, well, the CBD store would still be separate, I guess, to answer your question. The dispensary would be owned by a whole different group than the CBD store. So yeah, they would be separate entities. They would be next to each other in the same buildings, located in there somehow. But no, they would be separate entities.
A lot of these regulations are outside the scope of what our knowledge yet they're working on right now. June 4th.
June 4th. Gotcha. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
That's it.
Anybody else that has questions or wants to ask anything on this? Now's the time. Okay, with that, I will close the public hearing and we'll open it up to the commission to ask questions, comments. My understanding is we're not necessarily going to make decisions tonight. This is more just looking at the information that we've been given to ask any questions, concerns we may have going forward so that we can begin to make some of those decisions as more information comes down the pike. Is that correct?
Yeah, and the other aspect of this, Madam Chairman, I need to know what your thoughts are going forward so I can draft something for the next meeting so that we can actually have something specific to vote on. It'll be a, here's the language, the recommended language, et cetera. As it relates to that, I would identify, my recommendation is now will be at the end of the day that we take the 5 definitions you see in the back or on page 2. Those come directly out of the constitutional amendment. They can't be changed by the state regulations or us. So my recommendation would be that we make those the definitions of those entities and facilities specifically, no matter what. And then we use those definitions in the rest of our regulations associated with districts or otherwise. That way we can definitively say No, we're talking about the ones that are specifically part of the amendment, the constitutional amendment for medical marijuana. The rest of it, how that works, et cetera, it becomes a function of how we want to get there.
Okay, so you're wanting us on these, on the neighborhood and the intents or the permitted uses to give approval basically on that, or to give approval of these definitions?
No recommendations or approvals. My recommendation to you is we use those definitions in the conversation.
Okay.
What I would ask you all to do is ask questions, do your best to identify which one of the district uses would be most appropriate for these types of facilities, specifically, which ones make the most sense to you. And then going from that perspective, we can talk about the I-1, I-2, the B1, 2, and 3. And if you'll note, in the zoning district information that I provided, those are cut and paste right out of our codes. And I started with B1 for a very specific reason. Number one, B1 Neighborhood Business District. If you look at section B down there, near the bottom, you'll see a bolded provision that says drugstores. That, in my humble opinion, means a facility where you can dispense medical marijuana, a drug. So that would mean that our current code would allow the B1 district. By implication, in the B2 district, it allows any use permitted in the B1 district. And the B3 district says anything in the B2 district. So the definition of drugstores and inclusion as a permitted right in the B1 means it's in B1, B2, and B3. Interestingly enough, it's not in the B4 district. It's got its own set of uses. So in the downtown business district, it's not in our code currently to allow a dispensary or any other facility. And then when you get to the B3 descriptions, you will see as well that it also identifies an item, number 3 on the very last page, in advanced research, development, laboratory, and testing services. So the testing facilities can be located in the B3 district. Currently, as we're written, the other more intense uses of the cultivation facility, the manufacturing facility, obviously weren't contemplated when we had our revisions to our code and changed the definitions in 2013 because it was still not even an issue. So now we need to update those. So currently, absent a change or an addition, the B1 district would authorize dispensary facilities. That means on your green zoning map in purple would authorize it. Most evident to me is the vacant land at 180th and Old F Highway. That's B1. So B1, if you look at the definitions, it talks about what it is for, and it's kind of complementary to a residential use. I'd ask that you consider whether a medical marijuana dispensary would be something you'd want to keep in the B1 district. That kind of conversation is what I'm hoping you guys look at.
And that letter is B1, not B3?
Where at?
They're at 180th.
Yes, it's B1. Yep.
My question is, I kind of look at this as sort of, I compare it to a regular pharmacy, where are those allowed, and also if people are concerned about, reefer madness or whatever, then, look at liquor store requirements, as far as footage and all of that goes. what are some comparable, would that be also B1 or would that be B3? And then you have in B3, a lot of those daycare facilities are in that area too. So.
Right. A couple of things to keep in mind. The only thing this restriction will be is if a facility is wanting to locate, it can't do it currently in this iteration, 1,000 feet of one of them.
Okay.
If they go in, they can't get pushed out, similar to an alcohol facility.
Okay.
So B1 will allow you to have a bar. They can serve alcoholic beverages in there. So.
And just in some of the research that I did on what, you know, in other places that already have this, a lot of the cultivation facilities also do their own testing and like it's all kind of an all-in-one indoor situation because they're very particular about it. So it makes sense to me to put it with what, like you were saying, that gray area, the I-1 area.
I will highlight the testing facility, as Mr. Miller indicated, does have to be separate. You can't grow it, manufacture it, test your own stuff, but you can have a facility, you just wouldn't be able to test your own stuff.
You'd have to have somebody else doing the testing?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you can.
Because they were worried about contamination.
Well, I think the other aspect of it is you want to have checks and balances, so they're going to want somebody other than the people
Sure.
doing everything else testing. Yeah.
Okay.
But having a facility.
Great.
Jack, could you review then, again, in the I-1 districts, what can't be done there in this?
Well, I-1 is our light manufacturing district, so it is, it would certainly authorize, if you look at what it does authorize, manufacturing production, it is in the realm of what we're talking about. Unfortunately, this is a brand new industry to Missouri, so we don't have any definitive aspects related to it. But I-1 will certainly be it. I-2 is usually the really heavy users, smelting plants and that stuff that generate a lot of smell, a lot of smoke, and all that stuff. We have none of that. I don't anticipate we'll ever have any of that.
So I-1, you can manufacture this stuff, that's where you would grow it and so forth. Could you retail it there too?
You theoretically could, if you look at on the very last page where you're at, under the I-1 Light Industrial District. If you look right below the number 2 manufacturing, you'll see in 3 that any non-residential use allowed in any of the others, which would be the dispensary, but it can be no more than 25% of the square footage of the entire building. So, 1,000 square foot building would have 250 max for the dispensary side. That'd be awful small.
So we could do a recommendation, I guess, of the whole process. We have to be done in I-1.
Sure.
We could do
Sure,
that.
sure.
And then would we then have to go back and update each of those other zonings where it says drugstores, not including?
Now, ultimately, there's a Latin phrase, and it's the way you interpret statutes, but ultimately, inclusion of one in a location means exclusion elsewhere, which is how we don't have it in the B4 district, because it's included in B1, B2, and B3, but it's not specifically included in the B4 district, so it's excluded. My recommendation is use the definitions of all these facilities, and then you identify what districts those facilities are able to go in.
And that protects all the other zoning areas.
Yeah, well, ultimately, yeah. I mean, the site plan, the 1,000-foot barrier can either be attached to a definition in the zoning ordinance, or it can be in the business licensing provision. However that would be. They have to be on property zoned, however you all lay that out. Or the board ultimately, you make a recommendation, the board goes there. So we get the zone districts and get that stuff hopefully all resolved by April-ish. That gives anybody who's interested a definitive, these are the pieces of ground in Smithville I can use if I want to do this here, so they can acquire them or acquire a facility otherwise. So,
So if we were to recommend, using the five definitions, if we were to recommend that the I-1 zoning include that, then it would be inclusion, and then automatically exclude from, say, B1s.
yes. And we would simply, the procedure would be to, in the I-1 district, would be to add a new permitted use that would say medical marijuana facilities that are however they're defined. We want to identify every one of them too.
And then include all of these definitions, like the 1 through 5, that's what we want them all.
Right, right, so you would basically say, for all intents and purposes, it would be number 7 in that I-1 district would say, medical marijuana cultivation facility, dispensary facility, infused products manufacturing facility, and testing facility are all permitted in the I-1 district. They're all permitted. Including it there, you exclude regular ones.
Would the exclusion of preventing it from being retailed from other business zones, would that be considered undue?
I don't believe so. If you give them the ability to come into your community, you can do it. The other aspect of it is there's going to be a lot more dispensary facilities than there will be cultivation and manufacturing. Or testing. A lot more. 192 of the dispensaries. Maximum
So that
81.
it does narrow the dispensary facility part, I think, a lot.
Right. The
For our area.
biggest impact that I've been to several regional meetings on this. A lot of government officials talking about, okay, what are everybody talking about their concerns, what the issues are. A lot of folks went out to Colorado and on the West Coast where they already had medical marijuana stuff and went through what you guys see. To be quite frank, the biggest impact for us isn't going to be these facilities, it's going to be the home grow operations. Individual patients have the ability to grow up to 3 or 6 plants themselves. They can have a lot of security associated with it. A lot more than what most people think as well. But those are pretty much outside the realm of our regulation. We can't do anything about it. Just like if you're growing a basil plant to eat, you can do marijuana at home in the same scenario. There's no zoning, there's no regulation we can do. Simply, you have to get a state permit to do it. If you don't have a state permit, it's all illegal. So you don't get the exemptions. But from our perspective, it's the current situation is this is 100% cash only business. All aspects of it are cash. Because it's still a scheduled federal drug, the banks can't get involved, it's all going to be cash. After you get outside the cash, once you get the cash, you can go to the bank, you can do whatever because it's cash. But no, you can't do any of the wire transfers or any of that. You can put cash into your bank. So there's going to be, that's the security issues. Cash and the marijuana itself. But I will say the average drugstore has much higher value drugs than marijuana. Much more dangerous drugs than marijuana. So that's the balancing scenario. You know, you can go to a drugstore and get a bottle of liquid morphine for certain patients and it's an injectable drug.
And I'm just looking at this from a business point of view. If I were a business owner and I wanted to invest on the retail side of the dispensary industry, I'm not sure I would want to be in an I-1 location. I would probably want to be in the B3 location. So I guess my question is, why wouldn't we let them? You know.
I'll speak to that.
Sure.
And what I'm looking at is where we already have all the orange dogs.
Uh-huh.
And I'm looking at, future possibility of other daycares, other, churches going in close to those locations. And I understand once, if we allow it in B3, and if they're there, we can't kick them out because the church comes in, correct?
Right, just like water.
So that's where I'm kind of looking at, trying to look at centralizing where these can be at the whole process to kind of protect, in my opinion, the integrity of the rest of our communities.
And my view is that they're gonna have no problem finding him anyway. It's a specialized retail product.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the cultivation, manufacturing, and the testing, definitely. All three of those, I want. A little bit,
And that's the industry recommendation
yes.
as well. They do not make a recommendation on the rest.
On the dispensary part, you know, I kind of see both sides. For the retail business person, but yet I like the fact that we do want to protect some of the integrity of our future that way too. Doesn't mean that the church can't go in there though, you know,
Right.
and buy the property or whatever. I think the biggest issue I see with some of the I-1 on doing it all that way is we're very limited on what we have available. There's not really a lot. So are we
The only,
putting on a restriction?
yeah, the only thing I want you to be aware of associated with the I-1, and we can adjust some of the other aspect of it, is if you've got a dispensary facility that just wants to be a dispensary facility, they cannot by themselves open an I-1. Because the 25% square footage limits, they have to have something else. So if you've got just somebody that wants to do a dispensary, they can't be an I-1 by themselves, because they have to have 75% of that business has to be in the restaurant. That makes it a little more difficult, but it's not something we can't craft the words around.
So my question is, if we don't want to be, say, overran by 50 dispensaries in one town, you know, can we limit the number of retail dispensaries?
No.
We can't.
The
The
state,
state already has.
Uh-huh.
The entire 6th district, which is from Platte Woods and us, et cetera, all the way up to the state line in Iowa and Nebraska, and halfway across the state, there's 24 total.
so they will spread those out because there's only 24
Yeah.
for that whole
They
area.
naturally would not want them all in one space,
Right.
I'm sure, so.
They're going to theoretically have qualifying patients in every community. So, you know, St. Joe, Maryville, up in that area,
Does this include
down here.
Liberty?
I don't know how far over in that direction 6 goes.
It goes all the way to Campbell.
Yeah.
Yeah, up north it doesn't.
It has, down here, it's, like in Clay County, it has everything but Gladstone and North Kansas City. It doesn't have that spot, anything north of 77th Street, basically.
And it also goes down in the.
And then it goes down into Jackson County, it's the Fort Osage School District area, and then into Blue Springs, English Summit as well.
And Warrensburg, I believe.
Do what?
Warrensburg, I believe also.
No, Warrensburg is 4th district.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So that's a lot of area for just 24 facilities. I mean,
Just.
just.
I guess it's a matter of perspective. But I will tell you, I've had 5 contacts, different contacts for various levels, either dispensary or separate or combined. And today, or yesterday, we had our first industrial hemp, unregulated. It's a regular crop, they can go anywhere because it's just legal.
And we don't know though yet, even though a lot of this would be an I-1, and we have some of it in our hands, but we don't really know how that may affect our sewer and water and things of that nature at this point in time. That would be more into the actual permit process, is that
The
correct?
business licensing aspect of it,
Yeah.
yes. We already have a provision of commercial and industrial waste that allows us to charge surcharges to those customers that are putting stuff in.
And put restrictions on so their lake's not damaged and.
Yes, yeah, all that. And the bigger thing for me is, it's the same, we have a SBR sewer system, so it's full of bugs that eat the bacteria and stuff in the sewage. If we put a chemical in that kills them, then we are no longer treating our system. So we have to be very protective of that. I don't think we're going to be in that scenario with the chemicals, but we even have the authority under our current ordinances to require them to do a pre-treatment at their cost before they can put it in our system. I don't think that's going to be in this scenario, but the sewer stuff, we have an ordinance, and ultimately that kind of operational aspect, best handled through the business licensing. The other aspect of it is it can go in either business licensing or the zoning, and that would be the time of operation for a retail facility. You know, you can say 8 to 5. That's it. It can't be open after 5. My guess is that would be more easily handled in the business licensing provision. Similar to, you may recall, some of you I think were on the board when we had the shooting range that was interested in coming in, indoor shooting range. Couldn't do that in Smithville because you could not discharge a weapon. But we changed several stuff to allow that to be, if it was indoor, and you met these standards, so we set certain performance standards at the zoning level, and then codified them in the business licensing as well, associated with as long as you're in this and meet this, you can get the license. So it's kind of a two-layered system. We have the zoning, and then over the top is the business license. So the easiest way to describe it would be the business license provision would say that you could not get a business license unless you're in one of the districts that are allowed, and the hours of operation are limited to this or whatever. That would be the easiest provision, the location to put it, if that makes sense.
What has the staff review found to be the norm with dispensaries?
To be quite frank, we're as far ahead as anybody else is. The only other difference is a lot of folks have put out provisions that would put a moratorium on anybody filing an application to open one. Most of them are 90-day moratoriums. We chose not to even recommend that because if we put a moratorium out for 90 days, it would come, they could start applying before June 4th. Well, they can't even start their state licensing until June 4th. So that's when they get the application. That process doesn't start till August.
And
August
they're
3rd.
probably not going to know until December. If,
Right.
I think
We
we
do
have to
not-
go by December 31st.
Yeah, we do not anticipate any groundbreaking of any new facilities of any type until 2020. But we want to have at least the first set of ducks in a row set up so that we don't get into the unduly burdensome lawsuit.
Well, I agree with the 5 definitions. I mean, I think those all make sense, and having that common language and whatever we have to write makes sense to me.
Is there anything else that maybe, again, this comes in licensing, that we can put in as far as on the dispensary end? Because that seems to be the problem I'm doing a little bit, in the fact that there's, you know, you gotta have major security, cash business, you know, a lot of things there. Is there anything that we, trying to think how to phrase this, but to stipulate, okay, because of the fact that these have to have this kind of stuff, where does it fit? Or it doesn't fit in those things because of some of the extra security and things. It doesn't fit to be just, anywhere because of those things.
Right. That's why I read out to you the B1 district stuff right on that. They need to be in a highly visible area. The busiest intersections you can think of would be the best, because that works as its own form of security. When you get something out in the dark and it's closed up, it makes it a lot easier to have problems with it.
When you talk about B1, are you referring to just the retail dispensary, not the?
Yeah, just the dispensary, because it, in my interpretation of our code, it's a dispensary like that, it's a drugstore. And if we don't change that, it goes there.
Yeah.
So B1, B2, B3.
And it looks like those are already pretty far from churches and daycares.
Well,
Am I
B1.
seeing that clearly? No?
B1's right in the middle of a lot of it. It's intended to be right into residential areas. That's the other aspect. I mean,
Yeah, it's right by residential
Yeah.
B1.
and you can't see it very well because I apologize because this map is tiny. But being a 9.5 mile long and a 1.5 mile wide city kind of has to be that way. There are B1 properties currently zoned B1 on Old F Highway just north of the Housing Authority. There's 2 of them there. The Carter Corner and the Harborview Townhomes.
Are there daycares out there? I guess I'm not aware.
No, there are not. The daycares, orange.
Yeah.
Daycare schools and churches.
Do you have to take into account home daycares, or is this just?
It's the over 5. You can't have it in your home if it's more than 5. And that's the same concept. We pulled that definition out of the top stuff.
It seems to me for all, everything, the dispensaries and home and yards, it still would be light industry. Probably the safest place to be because it's compact, more easily patrolled by law enforcement. Just a more secure place for this. You're talking a cash business. We've already got morons coming up here, breaking into people's vehicles coming from other parts of the city and the state. What's to stop more morons from coming in here and hitting B1s and B3s and things like that looking for it? So
Based upon my understanding, the biggest law enforcement issue is not these facilities getting hit. It's people driving improperly and homegrown stuff. That's what they're concerned about. Homegrown, they don't have their security. The requirements for homegrown operations, you got a limitation on the number of plants, but only the qualified patient has access to the area where they're grown. So if the qualifying patient is the husband and the wife is not a qualifying patient and she doesn't qualify to be his caregiver, he has to have that place locked up she can't get into. That's how restricted it is. But that's it. It doesn't say anything other than physical security from no one other than the qualifying patient. And we don't know yet what if you have to have a permit to grow at home from the state, are those going to be public records? If they are public records, do we think people are going to search those public records and say, okay, we know that house has got popping? That's the area that's got the most concern from the law enforcement side because it's unprofessional. It's literally not negative in that it's not a professional operation.
all right, my other concern, in addition to security, is that if it were allowed in some of these B3 areas and things like this, we would be setting a whole lot of population on fire. I mean, I can well imagine the backlash from people living in the residential areas saying, not in my backyard.
And I don't don't disagree, that may very well happen, it will be allowed, but what we do know is it will not be anywhere close to the majority. We're 68% of the population in our district voted for
But
this.
that was before that was before they might find out that, oh, you didn't put this in my backyard. That's not what I wanted you to do.
Right.
Yeah, so it becomes a whole other ballgame when you're waiting.
And ultimately, that's the purpose of this conversation. Let's get the location figured out, how tight the regulations are on the other side. It can be somewhat controlled by the state regulations. But end of the day, where do we want the facilities? Do we want to bifurcate? Do we want to segregate the dispensary from everything else? There's another business that's not even listed in any of this, but I understand it's a very large business. And it is similar to an eye doctor. It's a place where a doctor sets up a shop so people can come get their qualifying cards. That's all, yeah, and it's not regulated, it's a doctor they have to get, but they advertise them. In other states, the doctors put up these little shops and people come to, yeah. Well, it's not a prescription, it's a card that says, I have one of these conditions.
Yeah, that's in the B2s right now. In terms of businesses, and I mean, it's not very many places where I'm curious if that would be possible locations for dispensaries.
To the extent that the name of the B2 district is the non-retail business district, you may want to.
So that's not really.
And I think the most important thing, when we went through this discussion in 2013-14 and redid the zoning, the bold intent for the B2, the intent is to accommodate a demonstrated need for office and other non-retail space adjacent to residential. And that. B1 has its own intent description. Mixed-use commercial facilities, convenience shopping facilities, office and multi-facility residential and near residential.
So it almost sounds like all of B3 needs to be.
All of B3 needs to be B2.
B2 is basically office buildings, and that's it.
And then
So things like, you know, county wants to do that whole strip there with office and stuff.
yeah, he's B3. He can do
I
however.
agree, but
But we agree with that definition of B2, that it provides a buffer to residential areas.
Right.
so it's kind of between residential and the retail.
It looks like a lot of the B3s that are budding out next to residential, she's right, they should have been two, that here and there for this one, but.
Yeah. Well, in the end of the day,
They've been away a long time.
I would tell you, as it relates to B1 designations and B2 designations on this map, I'm not certain that anyone that they weren't looking at it in the same frame of mind that we look at them today.
Right.
Probably not.
It was a,
But they probably didn't anticipate the growth that we have residential in some of our areas because they probably add.
well, and I think in the old records, we had B1s because that was the most restrictive use that would allow the applicant's business to go in. They were looking at it, and who's standing at the podium versus the use. So that was the concept of the discussion. I know that was how the B1 in Harborview got there. So we look at zoning in a broader picture and comprehensive plan now. What are the uses in that district? What are the impacts on the neighbors? Which is why we've got a fairly comprehensive site plan. If you're building a new building, we want it to protect the people who live close to it. But we want to have the whole operation, the highest and best use. Property taxes that give us the ability to provide all the services.
So I'm going to go back. Down there where the car wash is, they're only crossing Quick Trip. North of that is that farmland, correct?
Yes, north of that, and it's not in the city.
It's not in the city.
Correct.
So put this out there. If we look at doing a right?
We certainly,
Rather than expand and
When they get I-1.
making it I-1, because as the city grows, we may need more industrial.
that, well, to be quite frank, that would be one of the locations that would be best suited for it. Anything around that existing I-1, creeping it would be the best location. That land is up for sale, it's been up for sale for 35 years. So,
That might be something we want to look into, because
ultimately, I think their anticipation, the seller of that land anticipates they're going to sell it to somebody who will then want to annex to the city.
So you're talking about that I-1 then?
yeah,
Making it I-1.
Would that work though for dispensaries only?
I'll be right on 69.
It doesn't work for dispensaries.
Well, we would have to change the language.
Only unless we allow that.
Well, you'd have to change the dispensary in I-1 would have to change some of the other regulations associated with it, because any retail business in the I-1 can only be 25% of the square footage of the facility. So if it was an independent facility, you couldn't do all of those. If that makes sense. But it doesn't mean we can't change the word.
Yeah, that's the answer.
And ultimately, at the end of the day, we can talk about this for a long, 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 long time, and I suspect we will. What I would like to do is, I've got a pretty good ear on the ground, at least as it relates to what you guys are talking about. That'll give me the ability at the next meeting to come up with a draft with some options that will allow you to do the, I say, pick item A and insert it, or B and insert it. And I'm confident that there's going to be more public communication on this. I would also, Madam Chairman, recommend that when we do come back for this, we don't have to re-advertise it as a whole new public hearing, but I think we should open the next one up for public hearing as well, because when the word gets out about this discussion, more people may want to come. So we can simply table the public hearing and open it for, or postpone it until the next hearing, and give that opportunity at the next meeting. Because obviously we're not going to get it done today.
I'm not against a dispensary coming to Smithville. I just want to be very cautious of where it goes to, like I shared earlier. That's
And I think part of our concern, I think you hit on a lot too, is my concern is when they can't have the dispensary only the way it is right now in the I-1, and we don't have a lot of property. So, you know, we definitely did limit that, and it could be a good benefit tax-wise to the city. So I think we have to look at some of those
What if we
issues
did it
also.
as, you know, like we were saying for the industrial side of it, the I-1, the dispensary could go, you know, in the B3s as long as it, and just put in there as long as it's within, you know, 1,000 feet of, you know, this or that or the other.
but we've got a lot of.
But we got a lot of trees that look right up to residential.
Yeah, I know, so they would have to,
And that's.
they would have, the business would need to figure out, you know, what the
Right.
property
So
they're
that's what we're
eyeballing
concerned, 'cause
falls
we-
within that requirement.
We will hear it.
As
you
might
Well, and
You also said if we don't restrict it.
well, keep in mind, these are, we will know by June of 2020, we will have 24 facilities in operation in this district. We're going to have 24. We're going to know where they're going to be. Based upon my conversations with the people in the industry,
By June of 2019.
nothing will be in place until 2020. in
He means
operation.
up and running.
But we will have all 24 of them up and running by June of next year. So 15 months from now, whatever that is, 16 months. So one of the things that I anticipate, they're going to want to be in as high a traffic area as they possibly can.
is here.
It's,
Mm-hmm.
and they're gonna wanna be as close to the population centers as they can, which is somewhere on this further south, you know, the 92 area, the I-1 area, or areas that are well-traveled with a lot of traffic. We have 23,000 cars a day at 144th and 169. We have 18,000 right here at Meadow. So we have a lot of traffic. When you get north of the gas station up here, that traffic cuts in half. So, when you get up to 180th Street, it's 8,000 vehicles a day. Seems like a lot, but it's not really that when you look at farther south. They're going to want to be in the highest density traffic areas that they possibly can. And some aspects of the regulations that I would anticipate the board's going to be looking at will also be the outdoor advertising limitations related to the business on site, what they, you know, advertising the name of the business and what it is. But
right now, our industrial areas that we do have are way off the main. I mean, they're off. So as far as advertising, like clear back by Bright Automotive and down there, I mean, they're not real visible.
the other, and the other aspect of, at least the current industrial
Yes.
one districts that we have, they are cited such that they're not likely to have residential get close to it. The big one, it backs up to the bluffs and there's a river below it. So nothing farther west will come in. To the south, it's the stuff that's not in the city, just south of that, is actually zoned for apartments in Clay County now. But that's a theoretical option down there, adjacent to the big red D3 you see. But that would be another area that could potentially go into that as well. Keep in mind, we do have a comprehensive plan that identifies kind of where the uses are. I anticipate we'll probably be rolling that comprehensive plan discussion up and starting that with a consultant probably next year. When that process starts, the future land use map is the most essential element of that. Where do we think people, where do we want people living? Where do we want people doing their business? Where do we want manufacturing for our jobs, etc. So it's a big picture issue. But right now, we are where we are.
The sewer that's going in and stuff on the south side, we're gonna have growth, that direction.
And it will open up a lot of residential homes out there.
Well, I would like to see us make a motion to accept the 5.
Why don't we do it this way, instead of making a motion and getting this formally started,
Okay.
is take a consensus that, and no one has said anything different, the 5 definitions that come out of the amendment will be the basis of any definitions we have, and I will draft up I-1 regulations associated with all the new there, or I-1 and B3 options for y'all. Because I know the 2 members that are absent are certainly going to want to provide their comment. My guess is now that we have a little bit of a structure and kind of, the good thing is you guys talked about the real important issues, what your concerns are. I also, from a consensus standpoint, it seems clear that nobody wants it to be 1 or B2. So I can adjust that aspect of it as well. B3, maybe, with the right, and then I-1. Yeah. Some have it V3 and I-1, some of them have only an I-1. We'll have both options available.
I have to say, I'm an I-1 person, and the biggest reasons that I have is security, concentration, as close to the driveway, and I absolutely do not want a war with any of the other residential areas that have B3 in their midst, because I'm sure a lot of those people voted for this, but they probably didn't think it was going to be in their backyard, because I imagine the majority of Smithfield is not aware of the zoning.
Sure.
they're driving up to. So if they had any idea it was gonna be in their backyard, it would have been a whole different story. This place doesn't have enough room for all those people who are.
Right, and at the end of the day, keep in mind, B3 allows Walmarts. So, you know, the zoning that's in place is in place. Anybody wants to use it, how they want to use it. If we're regulating based upon fear, we can do that. If we can regulate on what's the best long-term for the, you know. The good thing is, we're going to have a recommendation out of this board, hopefully at the next meeting, one way or the other. Either all I-1 or I-1 and B3 combined. And we will be able to layer through the particular concerns.
So everyone comfortable
Yeah.
letting Jack bring forth for next meeting some more information and having it for us? And we will plug on. Let's go for it on this at that time.
I anticipate getting this out, hopefully, the Wednesday before our meeting on the Tuesday, so it gives you a little more time to actually read it.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Detail, read it, and maybe even come up with, I don't like that language here, so that way we can come here ready to make motions, and the discussion can be very pointed.
Do we have serious interest in people coming into it?
As I've indicated, we have 5 different entities.
Well, yeah, I can see the pros of this. I have no problem with this dispensary, and I have no problem with it. I'm just concerned about where it's going to go.
Are these sales taxable sales?
Yes.
So we could, we had quite a bit of revenue for the city this way.
Depends on how much they sell, but at the end of the day, yeah. Yeah, they will be current city, county combined, and state combined, plus an additional 4 over the top. We're 2%.
Well, I
The city
know
taxes.
several people who would be very much interested in partaking,
Yeah.
because they have got
Well, they'll be able to go to one of those doctors that issue the cards.
That's the other question I was going to ask, you know, I'm assuming that your regular medical doctor, your primary care physician can give you a card to do this, but you're saying that there's also, like, I guess, a cottage industry or drop in a box where people come in and just get nothing but a card?
They focus purely on, some of them may very well be eye professionals or whatever else they focus on, and they can get all, they usually have to come in with their whole thing of medical records from all their other doctors, and they perform the exams and go through that process. They don't issue them a card. They sign an application from the state that says, I, as a doctor, certify that they do have glaucoma, or whatever the specifically identified conditions, whatever they are. Yes, they have them. It doesn't change a whole lot of the other stuff. You know, you can have that card all you want, but it doesn't mean you pass your drug test. If you get a random test, it works. No, it does not. If you're a police officer, you can't even have a card because it's a federal controlled substance, and you can't do that at all because of the gun. You lose your license. So there's a whole bunch of stuff, you know. Yeah. Yeah. So those are the aspects.
Okay, well, I think we've got a good idea, we know what's coming, so be prepared at the next meeting to get down on it a little bit further.
Sure.
So, with
There's no
that,
guarantee or obligation that we actually come out of the next meeting with the recommendation. The sooner we get it, the less likely we're going to have ourselves potentially in a pickle with somebody.
the sooner the better.
Yes.
We know it's coming.
And the board will be able to do all of the other security, safety issues related to those businesses once the regs come out in the state. So I would imagine in June and July, we will be wrapping up business license provisions, one of which is certainly going to be uncertain, that if you apply for a license here, you have to have a state license on the way. So.
Is there anyone or would it be beneficial to have someone from the industry speak?
I think Jack's
Yeah.
staying up on it
Yeah.
for us.
And
Just
to be clear,
that's necessary.
there may very well be some, because I know some of them are going to be watching this video. So,
Staff's been on top of it quite a bit, as well as the Premier Bowling, and the Alderman, so I think we've got good.
I've met face to face with 3 separate entities in town.
So there's going to be a city right now, be interesting to have a topic discussion.
Yeah, I know what it is, you know. So, okay, I need a motion to adjourn.
I will gladly make